Hi everyone and welcome to my channel Karoline's Knits. My name is Caroline and I live in Scotland with my partner Ben and our dog Fela. I am originally Danish but I've lived in Scotland now for 8 years. This is my second time filming this episode and I've had to slightly rejig my usual setup because basically I've come to the conclusion I can't find a place in the house where I like to film. So I'm trying this place again today simply because, as you might be able to see behind me, we have proper autumn weather, so it has essentially been raining all morning. It is completely grey, it's like the sun hasn't even gotten up today, but I have a day off from work today, so it's the perfect time to film because I won't be rushing in my lunch break, etc. So I decided to go for it, but it does mean that we have to use, I'm using the lights on my makeup table, which kind of gives that ring light effect. So I'm going to see how I like this setup. I'm not going to film this episode again because it's just silly. At the end of the day I want this to be a fun hobby, and I think if you have to film something for the third time we're probably past the fun stage. If you are new here, I always have everything linked down below and I'd always encourage you to take a look at all the links and stuff. Just in case I forget to mention anything, I try to be quite thorough in my description box. That's also where you can find my social media. Again, if you're new here, you won't be used to my dog. So Fela is currently out for a lunchtime walk with her dog walker, but she should be back basically any minute. So what you'll probably see is like a black blur coming up behind me, and it'll cut out shortly, and then she should hopefully settle because she'll usually be tired. She will be soaking because of the weather, but so she'll go all floofy, but it should be okay. Usually I just kind of speak off the cuff, but after the fiasco of filming this episode the first time, I decided that today I was going to write a few notes because I just seem to kind of get lost in what I want to talk about and I forget it. People seem really positive about the slightly changed format, so today feels a bit more standard, but I've sort of thought about the order that I speak about things. Let's get started. Let's get started with what I am wearing. So I am wearing my sweater number 23 for, that was very poor. Let's try that again. I'm wearing my sweater number 23 by My Favourite Things Knitwear. I test knitted this for her and therefore I should declare it as an ad because the yarn was gifted. For the purpose of test knitting. I knitted this in one strand of Knitting for Olive Heavy Merino in the colour Stone, and one strand of Knitting for Olive Soft Silk Mohair in the colour Lead, which has created this like soft fluffy fabric. Heavy Merino, my understanding is that it's actually not the same merino as they use in a normal standard merino. It's slightly rougher, but I found it quite soft. I've already, oh, here she comes. Come on. Well done. Well done. Right, fittingly, this arrives. So, oh, we might have a little bit of fun unboxing. It is absolutely chucking it down, and Fela apparently got into every single puddle that she could find. So, good girl, relax. So we'll see how it goes. As I was saying, I have knitted another sweater number 20 as a test knit in this combination of heavy merino and soft silk mohair, and I just love it. It's definitely woolly, but I don't think you'd call it rustic, and it just wears so incredibly beautifully. This is obviously, the other sweater's cabled, whereas this maybe has a little bit more pilling, probably because it's all stockinette. But considering I have worn this every single day in the home office at my desk, so when you sat typing, you know, I still think the wear and tear is really good. I deliberately picked this quite sort of classic grey colour because when I got asked to test knit, I basically have to admit to myself I can't say yes to test all the time because I do want to knit some of my stash. But I was like, that sweater would just be perfect in a grey. I obviously spend a lot of my time with this little madam and we go to something called the Hoopers where you know, I'm outside for long hours, and we also go for long walks and those type of things. And for the home office, I think this has this quite like smart look, but still easy to wear. When it comes to the construction, I will pop in the sort of try on. I filmed that the first time I filmed this podcast, so I look a little bit different, but you get, you know, it's all the same. So the construction is a classic drop shoulder. You start at the back where it has this beautiful like increased line. I love the way she's done the increases on the shoulder. And you knit the back, then you knit the one side of the front, the other side, do increases. You join those and you join all of them, and then you knit the body, you pick up the sleeves, and you do short rows at the top of the sleeves, and then you also pick up for a neckline. I've had to put an elastic in mine, and I'm still not sure the elastic is perfect, so I might go in and slightly rejig it, but I just wanted to sort of see if it looked good, and it definitely made a big difference to how the neckline fit. Before it kind of almost stood up awkwardly, but after sort of threading just a thin elastic through the very top, it sits much better. I also made sure when knitting this, so obviously a big thing about these drop shoulder constructions is that quite big parts of the knits are actually worked flat, and that does mean you can have rowing out, which is when you have a different tension between your stockinette stitch and your pearls. They have a big tension difference between your knit stitches and your purl stitches, essentially. That's called rowing out. And so I'm just going to take my watch off because I recently put a story up and I think that's what's vibrating on my wrist and it's really distracting. And so yeah, it's very easy to have that. And I think because I'm a continental knitter, I think they call it Norwegian style, but obviously I'm Danish, but essentially just the way I knit continentally means I think it's more common that your purl stitches are looser. And I actually showed this sweater the last time, but honestly it was so minging and needing a wash that I haven't brought it out today. But I knit a similar shaped garment, the Wednesday sweater from Petite Knit, which also has like this kind of drop shoulder and you pick things up, etc. And the rowing out on that is just horrible. And as much as it doesn't bother me, like I still wear the sweater, I wanted to avoid it. So excuse me. So what I did was just a classic of essentially having two different needle sizes. So I used the main needle size, which I think was a 5mm needle for my knit stitches, and then I did 4.5 on purl stitches, and it meant that I could just knit sort of the natural way I would knit instead of having to sort of think about my tension. So I would really recommend that if you are struggling as well. And I think looking at it, I don't think it's obvious where I've had any differences. I think another thing that helps is that this colour of the sort of heavy merino is in a solid grey. It's kind of like this heathered melange, I think is what Phil Karoline calls it. That kind of, you know, it's not just like a straight colour, and I think that can often hide a little bit of inconsistencies. I would also say, I don't even know what I've written. Yeah, I'd also say that this sweater is not for like a very, very new beginner, but it's definitely something if you've knit 2 or 3 sweaters, you could definitely knit this. I should also mention, this is something I do talk about. I think like I'm quite open about what size I knit and my sort of measurements so that people can compare. If you ever want to have a scent on, you know, like a try on video scent of a sweater, or talk about sizing or of that, or any of that, and you know, you look similar to me, I'm always happy to help. I think it's one of the joys of social media that you get to speak to someone who's made the same garment as you. But I knit this in a size XL, which I think gives about 140 centimeter finish circumference on the sweater, which is about a 25-ish centimeter positives, 20 centimeters positives, I think. We're talking sort of in that ballpark, which is actually more than I would probably usually pick, but when I test knit, I knit everything according to pattern, which is why also the sleeves are maybe a little bit on the shorter side, and I would probably also have added a few more centimeters in the body, but that's quite common for me. But yeah, I just decided to pick the sweater based on, you know, pick my size based on what the sort of pattern recommended. I should also mention that this is actually her second pattern that is more size inclusive. So I think it goes up to 4XL. And obviously, as always with these positive eases, I think it can be really hard to judge how size inclusive things are, because technically, you know, 140 bust is quite a lot. But anyway, if you are interested and you are 4XL or under, it is graded up to that. I think usually she's done up to 2XL. So I did let her know. I thought it was quite exciting that she has decided to expand her size ranges, because I do think my favourite things, knitwear has a really good tendency to make sort of stable pieces in your wardrobe. I'm very much the like cool Copenhagen vibe, which I have none of. I don't have any sort of cool Copenhagen Scandi girl in me really, but I do feel that way when I wear this sweater. So yeah, I really loved it. Rightio, have a bit more of my tea before it goes cold. Man, it's too late, it is completely cold. Fix the lipstick. Right, now I'm going to show you my sort of next test knit. So here it is. So this is my current test knit. This is the Kerr sweater designed by my lovely friend Rebecca from the Creabea, and it is this drop shoulder construction with colour work on the body. I am knitting this in 2 strands of woolly knit. Hi, my good girl. Would you lie down, please? So I'm knitting this in 2 strands. My main colour basically is 2 strands of woolly knits, British wool cone. This is the Nep Cream colour. So essentially it's this like creamy base with black, mainly black neps in them, and a few brown ones as well. And kind of gives, you can see it here, gives this kind of fabric all knit up. And then my contrast colour is some yarn I had in my stash. So it is Isa Alpaca 1 and 2 in the colour, I think it's 4S, which I use for my office sweater, which is this kind of very, very dark grey. So I thought it was quite hard to choose colours. Actually, when I signed up to do the test knit, I did it because I tried Rebecca's original sample on at the Perth Yarn Festival, and I loved the sort of sweater that she ended up doing, which hers was like an the base was like an oatmeal colour, and then it was like an orangey colour work, and I was basically considering doing a very similar version to that. But then together with my knitting friend Olivia, we kind of discussed different options, and I just realised that actually this would be a perfect use of this neb yarn, because I think so basically you have this colour work across the body, and then when you pick up for the sleeves, you're going to have colour work that basically sits parallel to it, which I think would be really lovely. And looking at it, I was like, I actually think this is the type of sweater that I could wear to my place of work, which is semi-casual. I work at a university, and I would say, you know, you might wear a shirt, but then you could wear jeans with it. It's not like, you know, you don't have to wear like suits to work. So I really wanted something that would work with that, and I could imagine this looking really nice with just a shirt underneath with a pair of jeans, and it's like, you know, in the cold winter you'd still look quite chic. As always, can be worn for dog walks, always a major deciding factor for me. This is my second colour work project actually. So last year around the same time I knit the Phil Colana Nordstrand sweater designed by Hannah Raymond, and that's been one of my most worn sweaters. It actually slightly felted after its first wash. It's the only sweater I've ever had that happen to, but it just created this like really dense warm fabric, and I love to wear it when it gets really cold because it has a big roll neck. But basically just all of that to say, I am definitely not the most experienced colour work knitter, and what I really liked about this colour work is that you don't carry the floats so long that I don't think, if you are willing to give it a go, like I think you can definitely do it even if you're still quite inexperienced. While I was knitting it, or just as I'd started the colour work, I actually watched an episode a podcast episode by Knitting Traditions where she talks about how she does colour work. So similar to her, because I knit continental, I have found the best way for me is to have the contrast colour closest to my heart and the main colour on the other side of my knuckle, and I carry them like this, and it makes it really easy when I'm knitting. And especially this time I found I picked it, like it got easier much quicker than I remember it for the last one. So I did that again, but it does make it slightly easier to catch the floats, because basically what you can do is that when you go for your main colour, usually you would pick that strand going above the contrast colour, but you can instead go under and then catch it, and then on the next time you pick up the main colour, it has essentially created a float on the back. Now it seems that the advice is really different as to like how often you should catch your floats, but Inga said that she does it every like 2 stitches, because obviously every time you catch a float you basically put extra long strands of yarn on the back of it, which creates a bit more flexibility. And I was like, you know what, if someone who has knitted as many colourwork projects as her does it that way, I should probably just listen to her. So I started catching my floats quite a lot, and you can see it. This is the inside of it. Oops. Yeah, so this is the inside of it, and you can see it hasn't created those like really long beautiful floats, but what it has created is colour work, which is nice and stretchy, which is good, because I tried it on for the first time yesterday, and it's definitely a little bit my gauge is a little bit tighter across the chest, which you can see, I think, if I hold it up. I wouldn't say it's bad puckering, but I think in blocking it will essentially just need stretched sideways. I'm knitting size 5, just picking up my notes. I'm knitting size 5, which is definitely, I picked that size because that's what Rebecca's sample was in, and I really like the fit of that, but it's definitely on the smaller size. I should probably at least have knit a size 6 in retrospect. So that's what I would have done if I could do it over. But yeah, I have added, I've basically just decided on the length myself. I wanted it to be fully, full length. So I'm hoping I have enough yarn, because what I realised was that I don't have the right needle size to pick up for the neckband or the sleeves. So usually I would have finished the colour work and then gone straight to the sleeves or the neckband. But this time I realised I didn't have all the needles, and while waiting for them I've basically just been adding centimetres, and I just tried it on last night and realised that it was time for ribbing, or it would be too long. So I'm hoping I'll have enough. In general I would say I used a lot less yarn so far. I basically created a ball of yarn off the cone, and I think that was 80 grams, and that 80 grams took me all the way till just after the colour work, which I think is quite a significant chunk of the sweater. So I'm hoping I can get through with just 1 cone, but we'll see. If need be, I am kind of thinking I'll wait to do the neckband, because I also used a lot less of the contrast colour. I was keen to use up stash. Come on, Trailer. I was keen to use up some stash on, and I thought I'd use a lot more, but I had like a little bit of a pack of 2 left, and I didn't even finish that. So yeah, I don't think I'll run out of the contrast colour at all. So I always have that option for the neckband and maybe even the cuffs on the sleeves, because I'd like to use up as much yarn as possible. My final word of advice was that something I discovered when I was working through the colour work was that it became a lot quicker when I moved from quite a long cable to basically the smallest cable I could still realistically fit the stitches on without them falling off. So obviously you do want to straighten quite a lot on the right hand side to make sure you don't bunch up all the floats. However, I found that it moved much easier and much quicker, and it really sped up my knitting, because when I first began I had it on quite a long cable and it just took forever. I made so little progress, and once I moved to that much smaller cable, I basically tripled the amount of knitting I could get done. I just have the pattern open on my iPad while I knit, because I can memorize certain aspects of it but not well enough to not look at the pattern. So I did mean it wasn't that mindless, but now we are back in mindless territory with the ribbing. And yeah, I'm really excited by it. I'm hopefully seeing Rebecca soon, so we can have a little catch up and I can tell her about my experience so far. The next sort of thing I have finished is something I should have put on sock blockers, but to be honest, you guys, these have been loved so much that I don't even think a sock blocker will make them look neat. Yeah, they have stretched quite a lot, so I think they do reblock. But this is an installment in the sock saga. In case you are new here, I decided that 2022 was the year I was finally going to learn to knit socks. I basically really struggled to get on with small circumference knitting. But oh, is that Mr. Octopus? Wow. The dog is trying to get a toy that is underneath. Yeah, and so I've knit a few socks this year, and this is my latest installment of socks. These are the Morrison socks by Jenny Blumenstein, I think. I'll link the pattern down below. I just found it on Ravelry. I basically just looked up DK socks and it was a pattern I really liked the look of. It's quite a simple yet effective all over pattern sock. So you basically, you know, do just knits and purls on the front, and you have this like twisted a tubular, that's what it's called, a tubular knit stitch here, and then you have just these cables that go along the sock. And now that I can cable quite easily without a cable needle, flew right by, but they are just, I think, quite cute and classic. These are knit in the Annfield Angora's Annfield Farm Angora, something combination of that. It's knit in their yarn, so basically they keep mohair goats, or Angora goats, which is what makes mohair, here in Scotland, and they buy Shetland wool. So this is a mixture of Scottish Shetland wool and Scottish mohair wool. This is a 70-30 split. I also bought a 50-50 split, and I bought this at the Perth Yarn Festival. And basically I did that because I have heard before that mohair is considered quite a natural sock yarn, and that's what the lady said too, so she's like, you could give it a go and see. So far I have worn them out a little bit, and I'm just going to show you up close. You can see, yeah, do you see that right there? A little bit of pilling, but I think all in all I'm quite happy with the wear and tear on them. They are probably not boot socks simply because of the yarn, and I think in general wearing hand knitted socks in boots tend to just rub, especially right down the heel. So I've taken these in my like quite loose wellies with the dog kind of thing, but yeah, they have been keeping my feet warm. I will say, as you can probably tell by how much this has grown, I think for the next pair I'd go down a needle size. I might honestly, the second do the yarn that I bought at the Perth Yarn Festival from them, I might honestly knit the same sock because I really like the look of it. However, I'd love to replace this heel with a short row heel. So far I've knit one pair of socks with a short row heel, and that's still my favourite fit compared to all of the ones I've done in the heel flap and gusset. So if you have any advice on how you convert that, then let me know. The dog is crying. I think she probably wants outside, but I ain't going to do that, because what's going to happen is she'll put one foot outside and then she'll be upset because it's raining, so then she wants inside, but then she's inside and then she's upset she can't go outside. So please excuse the dog that is sounding neglected in the background. I promise she's not. She has been out with the dog walker probably for about an hour and a half today. Anyway, so these are my socks, and so far so good. They've been keeping my feet nice and warm and toasty. So in the sort of final big thing that I wanted to talk about was that in the last episode I basically showed another whip. I recently did a whip parade reel on Instagram, because obviously we should all be doing reels, is what Instagram is telling us. And one pattern that or one project I'd started was the September slipover, which is knit in brioche, and it's a pattern from Petite Knit that I was knitting in one strand of woolly knit British wool, their fingering weight, together with silk mohair from Knitting for Olive that I bought when they donated all their proceeds to the Red Cross for Ukraine. And I was desperate to knit this up, and I thought the September slipover would be a perfect fit. Now it kind of ended up not being something I worked on for a little while, simply because I got busy with all the test knit, etc. So I decided to finally pick it back up and add a few rows. And what I really disliked about brioche is that it seems if you make a mistake in brioche, fixing it is really difficult. It's not a very forgiving type of stitch for mistakes. And basically what happened was one evening I was like, oh, I can do a few rows because it's mindless enough that I could knit it sort of mindless, though I had a tendency to forget where it wasn't perfectly mindless, but I was like, I could add a few rows every night and actually make some progress to this slipover. Now, when I then picked it up, I was knitting on it one evening and I had done some increases. I thought the increase looked really loose, and so I kind of had tucked on the fabric a little bit, just thinking I'd done like a dodgy increase. And then on the next round, I realized I'd actually dropped a stitch several rows down. Now, I know you can tink backwards in brioche, and I was like, well, before I do that, I'm just going to try and see if I could maybe pick it up. And I wouldn't say I'd done a perfect pick up, but I could maybe have lived with that until I looked at the piece as a whole and realized that my gauge had changed significantly. Now, I know that there's like a spectrum of what mistakes people can live with, and I think in general I can live with a lot of mistakes. I am a perfectionist in all areas of my life besides knitting. Honestly doesn't bother me when I make mistakes in knitting. I am actually one of those people who can just say, oh well, it's what it is, and just move on from it. So when I don't feel that way about a mistake, I know it's quite grave. So I looked at it and I could tell my gauge was like, we're talking like when your eye can see it, and your gauge has changed a lot, hasn't it? So it was significantly tighter, and it was late in the evening and I should just go to bed. So I was like, I'm not going to make a rash decision about ripping it out. But I woke up the next morning and I knew in my heart, I was like, this isn't something I can rectify. And I was like, even if I, knit it back to fix the dodgy increase, it still won't change the fact that my gauge has changed that much. And I was like, you know what, it's actually making me not want to work on this project, that if I make a mistake, that's like the only way I can fix it is knitting backwards. So I ripped out, and then I started looking for a different pattern to use for this yarn because I really wanted to knit it up. I think I would get a lot of use out of a slipover, and I just couldn't find a pattern I really loved. So I did 2 gauge swatches. I don't know where they've gone. They're somewhere in my big knitting bag. But yeah, I did 2 swatches and I just didn't love the gauge of it. I asked for DK weight recommendations, slipover recommendations, and everyone said the Friday slipover. But I just don't think broken rib stitch looks that good in that yarn, if I'm perfectly honest. So then I gauge swatched for my favourite things knitwear slipover pattern, but the gauge was just too loose. I think as much as the woolly knit is fingering weight, I think it's on the light side of fingering. So yeah, basically it was all frustrating. I was angry with it, and I just reached that point. I was like, well, I'm just not going to force myself to cast on. But so I'm about to start another test knit after the Kerr sweater, but I can just tell I have a bit of a desire to keep something going from my stash. My goal for 2023 is very much to knit much more from stash. And so the yarn that arrived as I was filming is currently my last planned sponsored yarn test knit. Now, I am not a believer in I'm a big believer in never say never kind of thing. So if an offer comes up and I'm really keen to do it, I'm going to say yes. But so far, I'm thinking I'll do my best to work through some of my stash. So I was like, doing that whole, what am I interested in working on? And sweater number 18 by My Favourite Things Knitwear is a pattern that when it came out, I immediately loved it. And I still to this day, every time I see the pattern, I like it. It's one of those patterns that no matter what version I see, I always think it looks good. I think it looks good on all the different sizes and shapes I've seen try it on. And I think I'm coming to realise that for my home office, I actually get the most wear out of drop shoulders, so as much as it's maybe not the most flattering style, it's a really comfortable fit for working. Like, it keeps you warm, but you don't have things like up in your armpits and stuff. So basically that's what I decided, and I knew exactly, I had this yarn that I had actually bought intending for it to be a terrazzo sweater, but I came to realise over time that it could actually work quite well for sweater number 18. So I swatched and cast it on, and this is what I have so far. Yeah, here you can see it. So essentially I'm knitting this in one strand of Lana Gatto feeling, which is a 70% merino. I'm just going to hold this up while I talk. 70% merino, 20% silk and 10% cashmere, and it's a DK weight in this pinkish colour. And then I'm holding it with a strand of hand-dyed baby cereal alpaca silk from Sakami, one of my favourite hand dyes in the colour Fortuna, which I bought, I know because it says on Ravelry, I bought these yarns in the start of 2021. So they've been in my stash for over a year, and so I'm really keen to work it up because I think it's a beautiful colour. So I'll just fish out the cereal alpaca. You can see it here. So it's just kind of very pinkish base, and then it has these like bright orange, that kind of red squirrel, that's hard for me to say, red squirrel colour through it, and some like darker tones and stuff. So it's not like highly speckled, but it also isn't just completely plain. So you can see a little bit of it. Sorry for hitting my mug, you can see a little bit of it coming through. So yeah, I think it'll turn out really good. I did a gauge swatch and actually met gauge on the intended needle size. However, I decided that the fabric was a little bit thin, and so I sized down half a needle size. I calculated the difference in the finished circumference of the sweater if I went down a needle size, and I decided just to knit my usual size because this pattern is so oversized, because I thought it wouldn't be a big deal if it turns out a little bit smaller. And also I often knit looser when I work for a long time on a project, so for me it's probably not a bad idea. So I like this fabric a lot more. It's not like as see-through, but it's still sort of light and airy. It's not knitted onto a tight gauge. So these are 4.5mm needles, and I just plan to add a few rows. Once I kind of get going on my other projects, I might only add a few rows a week on this, and so I don't even think it'll be finished in 2022, but I don't mind. And yeah, we went to London a few weeks ago for a wedding, and my project that I brought, because I thought if I just bring one project I'm gonna have to work on it. I'm really keen to clear off my needles in before the end of the year, and this is definitely one that I'm not going to frog. Actually, I think I now have, besides like, well, I guess the sort of like resting whips, I have a Friedrich's cardigan and I have a peacock tee, and both of those patterns I'm starting to think I might not finish. I might frog them, so they're kind of just resting until I'd be ready to work with yarns anyway. But one pattern I would like to finish, because the yarn was also gifted for this test knit, and it was due to finish in, well, the pattern was released in early July. This is camisole, I think it's number 7. I put it on the little title bar, and it's this fingering weight camisole that has knitted in broken rib stitch, that has these kind of increases and decreases that kind of creates a bit of like a shape on the front of it. I'm knitting this probably in a size XL. I'm usually a size XL in my favorite things knitwears patterns, and as I said, the yarn was gifted, so it's knit in one strand of the Pascuali Naturali in Saffira, which is a merino silk blend in the colour number 12. This is the same colour that Louisa's original sample was in, and yeah, I added quite a few rows, so it just takes so long because it's knit on 3.25mm needles, and I think I'm coming to realise I am not a fingering weight pattern person. Like I think on like a 5 or 7, I can't remember, but we were on a train for a long time. I think I added like this much and I knit the whole way. So yeah, won't be finished anytime soon, but hopefully it'll be finished for next summer. It's basically just like a bra length now. So yeah, that lives in this beautiful project bag from Midwinter Yarns that I bought at the Perth Yarn Festival. I will include a link to her website because I think she's bringing out some more. And this tartan is the Mitchell tartan, my partner's tartan that he wore for our wedding. So also the needles are currently what's on the Kerr sweater, which is why it's not currently on needles, because I have made, because I've kind of forced myself to make that the like mindless knit I've been taking to work. So yeah, I was going to talk about the wedding in London and all of this, but I think based on the time, I am going to show you the yarn that arrived, and then I might do a little bit of a personal update at the very end. So I'm going to do that now. So there's acquisitions and talking about the trip to London. So if that's not for you, I will see you later, and I'm quickly going to unpack this so you don't get all the scrambles like all the noise of unpacking, and then I will be back. They are so beautifully packed that I am not going to unpack them, so I'm quickly put the tail end of me holding it up while I talk so you can see them, and silence all the crinkling so I can enjoy the full unpacking experience. But this will be the Sharpei sweater from Creadia Studio. The yarn was kindly sponsored, or is kindly sponsored, by Unling, which is a Danish brand that just restarted their shipping to the UK. So I was literally like probably one of the first UK clients to put in an order. So I'm knitting in the Sharpei sweater in 2 strands of their Everyday Wool, which is a wool cotton blend, and their soft silk mohair, and I will put all the colour names down below so you can check out for yourself. So yeah, it was really lovely to have that sponsored. It was quite a lot of yarn actually, so I am slightly nervous because you're holding just 1 strand of silk mohair, and the pattern asked that you order 12 balls of silk mohair, so that means there's a lot of meters to be knit up in it. So that's my next test knit, which I will slowly get started on because the deadline for that is in December. So it will probably be quite a busy test knit. And yeah, that's the acquisitions. For a little personal update, as I said, we were in London for a wedding, and what's really funny is that before I moved to Scotland, I don't think I had a full understanding about the size of the UK. Like in Denmark, Denmark isn't that big, and so I always, you know, it's much more like drivable than it is in the UK. So for some reason I've just never been to London much. I went as a tourist twice before moving to the UK, and then I have been there once for work, and that's it. So it was quite exciting to be down there and experience an English wedding, which is ever so slightly different than a Scottish wedding. Scots are crazier, I think. Or at least we just went to a very prim and proper type wedding. It was at a gentleman's club, which is not a strip club, even though it sounds that way. It's the type of club that, you know, slightly posher people or more wealthy people paid to go to, so they can take clients, and like you get free access to these special clubs, right? And you have to be a member. So we went to that. London, we went down on the sleeper train, so we slept on a train, which was quite an experience. Not sure I'd recommend it, but I also didn't hate it, so I would maybe do it again. And then we went back up on the train going up again. I quite enjoyed it because it made packing a lot easier than when you fly, because you can easily take a big suitcase, you don't have any like liquid restrictions, etc. And London is just so big. It's so hard to put into words when you're used to living up here. I studied in Edinburgh, that's why I moved to the UK, and Edinburgh is a big city, but it's not massive. It's still on the smaller side of a big city. It's also smaller than Glasgow, which lots of people wouldn't. I didn't realise that before moving here. So and I'm not very familiar with Glasgow, so I think I'm like, at heart, I'm kind of like a medium size city girl. I don't think I'm like really a big city, and London is just, it just keeps going. It honestly does. Like central London is such a small part of what London is. So it was quite a big experience, and I'm kind of hoping we can go back on some more trips. One of my bridesmaids from my wedding actually lives in London. And also my lovely friend Simona is obviously opening a physical knit shop in London, which I'm quite excited by. As you all know, I have bought yarn from Simona. We're just past the 2-year mark now, so I have always really loved her shop, so I'm quite excited for her to finally have physical premises. And an English wedding, I found, again, in a lot of ways quite similar to a Scottish wedding. I never know what to wear to these type of things. The funny thing about, you know, being an expat is that it's always like weird things that you don't culturally know what to expect. Obviously, the cultural differences between Denmark and Scotland, I wouldn't say they're actually all that big. Obviously, there's a different language and different slang, and there are slight differences, and many of them I take for granted now because I've lived here for 8 years, and obviously I'm married to a Scot. That does make my life easier. But yeah, in general, I don't feel as foreign anymore because I've spent most of my adult life here. But then every once in a while, you know, these small things pop up, and it's like, you know, like what's the expectation? And I didn't know the couple that well, so it wasn't like you'd write to the bride and say like, what should I wear? So I spent ages panicking about what I wanted to wear, and I didn't buy a full-on, like what I really think about when I think about English weddings are like, you know, there's big hats and stuff. I didn't know this, but they're actually called fascinators, and I ended up buying a fascinator. Stick that in. That's not very well done. I'm just looking in the viewfinder so you can, there you go. So I wore this with my dress, and I was actually probably ended up being a little bit overdressed, but a lesson that I have learned from my time in being a foreigner is that if you do feel a bit out of place, it's often better to be more nicely dressed so that you're not noticed because you didn't make an effort. So yeah, I probably spent more time stressing about that than I really had to. The strange thing as well is that obviously I've been married now since July, and I still haven't fully decided what to do about my last name. So currently I've kept my maiden name, but the couple we were, you know, the wedding we were at, they were our wedding as well, and I guess they just assumed, because on our wedding day we got introduced as Mr. and Mrs. Mitchell, my partner's last name, and I guess they just assumed I had decided to take it. So when I was looking to find my seat, I'd been to the loo while everyone else had sat down, and I couldn't find my name because I'm not used to looking for that last name. I have quite a special uncommon last name, and I just couldn't see it. It wasn't until I saw Ben's name and I realised my name, and it was a strange feeling to see my married name, because sometimes most of the time, to be honest, I still don't feel like I am a full adult, but it felt very adult to have like a different last name. So yeah, it was a really exciting trip to London. The day before the wedding, because we came down on, like, so we arrived in London on a Friday morning and the wedding was the Saturday. On the Friday we decided to do some touristy things, so we went to Tower of London. We went very, very early, like basically by 9 o'clock, and I would definitely recommend that, because when we arrived it was quite quiet and you had plenty of space. Like there were several places where we were the only people like looking at things, etc., and there was no queue to see the crown jewels either, which are stored in the Tower of London. And as we were leaving, it was starting to get really busy. We went to Borough Market for lunch, which was really lovely. Would recommend that. And then we went to Sea Life, which was really a big experience. My partner was desperate to go, and we were like children with money. We loved it. So that's what we did. And yeah, that's the sort of big things that's going on in my life. I am off work next week, which I'm quite excited for. So on Sunday we leave for a trip up north. We're staying in, I think they call it a shepherd's hut. So it's essentially like, you know, it's a little hut that has essentially a bed, a tiny kitchen, a teeny tiny little wood burner and a small bathroom. So we're going up north for that. It's about a 4-hour drive, and we are taking Fela. It's right by the coast, so there'll be lots of amazing walks. And what's really nice about this place is that the garden is fully enclosed, which just makes it so much easier to let the dog out for pee. But I'm really excited we're going away for 3 nights, and I just think going away doing very little. We'll probably just go for walks, come home, put on the wood burner, cuddle up in bed. It just sounds like the perfect way to spend a few days, because I am not gonna lie, I'm feeling the burnout big time. It is obviously dark and gloomy, and I'm just really tired and struggling a little bit, so I hope a week's break will be nice. And that's all I had to talk to you to tell you about today. Thank you so much for watching. Please subscribe if you haven't, it means so much. So there's a little comment, tell me what you're working on, what's going on in your life. I love to read it all. And you can also find me on Instagram, where I am much more active on stories than an actual post, but you can see a bit more of my life. I show you lots more of my little wolf, who is finally settled down for sleep. And yeah, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you soon. Bye.